When we talk about motivation, most people immediately think of external triggers. Things like money, recognition, success, or praise. And while these can certainly spark movement for a short while, they are not sustainable. They are like temporary fuel, giving you a burst of energy before fading away. The real source of lasting motivation does not come from outside. It is born from within. What am? Every one of us has a deep well of energy, creativity, and strength that often remains untapped. Not because it isn't there, but because we've been conditioned to forget it exists. To rise, we must first awaken this inner power, because without that awakening, no amount of external inspiration can carry us far. Think for a moment about the mind. Most people treat it as if it were a hard drive, a place where past experiences, memories, and beliefs are stored. And while that is partly true, the mind is much more than a repository of the past. It is also a generator of the future. Every thought you think, every image you hold, every belief you repeat, sends signals through your body that shape the way you act, the way you feel, and ultimately, the results you create. This means that your mind is not just reflecting your life, it is actively creating it. The challenge is that most of us have been taught to think from the past, to recycle old stories, to keep replaying the same emotional patterns, and then we wonder why tomorrow looks so much like yesterday. What Awakening the inner power begins with a simple recognition the self you believe yourself to be is not fixed. Your personality, your habits, your fears, and even your limitations are not permanent truths. They are patterns. And patterns can be broken, reshaped, and recreated. The real you is not the accumulation of labels and failures or the identity others have imposed upon you. The real you is the consciousness behind it all, the awareness that can choose new thoughts, new emotions, and new actions in this very moment. But why, if this power exists within us, do so few people access it? Because it requires responsibility. It is easier to blame circumstances, easier to say, I can't because of my past, or I'm limited by my environment. It takes courage to look in the mirror and say, if my life is to change, it begins with me. Not tomorrow, not someday, right now. That moment of responsibility is the birth of inner power. It is the moment you stop waiting for permission and you start realizing that no external savior is coming. You are the one you've been waiting for. And this is where motivation transforms. Instead of chasing it, you generate it. You no longer depend on the world to push you. You begin pulling from within. You stop asking, what can I get? And start asking, what can I create? Who can I become? That shift is radical, because it changes the entire orientation of your life. You are no longer a victim of circumstance, you are an architect of destiny. Now, what awakening this power is not about ignoring difficulty or pretending challenges don't exist. What it is about meeting those challenges with a new state of being. Think about fire. It can destroy, or it can warm and illuminate depending on how it is directed. Your inner power works the same way. Left unconscious, and it can fuel self-sabotage, fear, and doubt. But when awakened and directed with clarity, it becomes unstoppable. It turns obstacles into opportunities, pain into wisdom, and setbacks into comebacks. Science now confirms what ancient wisdom has long suggested: the human brain is neuroplastic. It can rewire itself. The body can change. The mind can evolve. This means that the story of who you are is not final. It is ongoing. Am. Every day you are given the chance to choose. Will you live from memory or will you live from vision? Am. Living from memory keeps you in repetition. Living from vision awakens your power. And here's the truth. Awakening is not an event, it's a practice. Am. It happens every time you catch yourself drifting back into old patterns and consciously choose something new. Am. It happens every time you replace self-doubt with a small act of courage. What am? Every time you silence the noise of distraction and listen to the deeper voice within. Over time, these small awakenings accumulate, and the inner power you once doubted becomes undeniable. So when I say rise, what am? I do not mean rise against others, and I do not mean rise with arrogance. I mean rise within yourself. Rise beyond the limitations you inherited. Rise above the story that has held you captive. Rise into the awareness that you are more powerful, more capable, and more creative than you have allowed yourself to believe. And when I say conquer, I do not mean conquer the world as if it were an enemy. What am? I mean conquer the parts of yourself that keep you from living fully. Conquer the fear that silences you. Conquer the doubt that paralyzes you. What am? Conquer the hesitation that keeps you from stepping into the life you were born to create. Remember this, what am? Your mind is not just a mirror of your past, it is a doorway to your future. The question is, will you walk through it? Will you awaken that inner power and choose to rise? Not someday, not when circumstances are perfect, but now, in this very moment, because the truth is no one can rise for you and no one can conquer for you. That responsibility, and that privilege is yours alone. If awakening the inner power is the first step, then the next is removing what has long kept that power dormant. The limiting beliefs we carry, these beliefs are invisible chains. They do not exist in the physical world, yet they are stronger than steel because they live in the mind, and the mind dictates action. A person can have the greatest potential in the world, but if their beliefs whisper, you can't, or you're not enough, then they will live as if those words were absolute truth. The tragedy is not that these beliefs exist. The tragedy is that most people never challenge them. They accept them as fact when in reality they are fiction. So what exactly is a limiting belief? It is a mental conclusion often formed in moments of vulnerability. What repeated so many times it becomes a filter through which we see the world. A child who was told they were too slow, too weak, or not smart enough may carry that judgment into adulthood without ever questioning it. A person who failed once may decide they are destined to fail forever. These beliefs shape our identity. Identity shapes behavior. And so the belief becomes self-fulfilling, not because it is true, but because it was never dismantled. Think about how much of your life is run on autopilot. The way you react, the choices you make, even the goals you set, are often influenced by unconscious beliefs. If you secretly believe success is not for people like you, then you will never take the risk success demands. If you believe love always ends in pain, then you will sabotage connection before it has the chance to grow. If you believe money is evil, then you will unconsciously repel opportunities for abundance. The belief shapes the lens, and the lens shapes the world you see. But here is the liberating truth: beliefs are not facts. They are perceptions, often outdated ones. And just as they were learned, they can be unlearned. To break the chains of limiting beliefs, the first step is awareness. You cannot change what you do not see. Begin noticing the repetitive thoughts that play in your mind, especially in moments of stress or challenge. Am. When you hear yourself say, I can't, or that's not me, stop and ask, who told me that? Where did this belief come from? And does it serve the future I want to create? Most often, am. You will discover that these beliefs did not originate with you. They were absorbed, handed down from parents, and teachers, society, culture. You did not consciously choose them, but you live under their rule. Am. Breaking the chain means reclaiming that authority. What am? It means realizing that if someone else wrote the story of your limits, you can pick up the pen and write a new chapter. What am? Now, this is not about blind positivity or pretending everything is possible with a snap of the fingers. What am? It is about reprogramming the way you perceive reality. The mind learns through repetition and emotion. Am. That is how limiting beliefs were formed in the first place. They were repeated, often in moments of high emotion. What am? To replace them, you must use the same mechanism in reverse. Feed your mind new thoughts consistently. Am. Attach them to new emotional experiences, and over time, the old belief loses its grip. Let's take an example. Am. Suppose you carry the belief, I am not confident. If you accept it as truth, it will dictate your posture. What am? Your speech, your decisions. But if you challenge it, you begin to experiment with new states of being. What am? You might stand taller, speak a little louder, take a small risk that stretches your comfort zone. What am? Each action is a strike against the old belief. And every time you act in alignment with the identity you want to build, the chain weakens. Confidence is no longer a distant trait. It becomes something you cultivate one choice at a time. Am. This is why awareness is so powerful. The moment you identify a limiting belief, you strip it of its invisibility. Am. It is no longer running your life in the shadows. It is exposed. And once exposed, you can decide, what am? Will I keep carrying this belief, or will I break it and replace it with something greater? Am. Breaking these chains is not easy because the mind clings to what is familiar, even if it is painful. Am. But growth requires leaving the familiar behind. Am. You cannot cling to old beliefs and step into a new life at the same time. Something has to be released. Am. And here is the beauty. Once you release a limiting belief, you don't just free yourself from one thought. Am. You free yourself from the ripple effect it has had across every area of your life. Am. It's like removing a weight you didn't know you were carrying. Suddenly, doors open where you once saw walls. So, am, to rise and conquer, you must dare to confront your inner dialogue. You must question the stories you tell yourself. What am? You must become more loyal to your vision than to your history. Because the past will try to define you. What am? But it is the future you are creating that should command your loyalty. Am, when you realize that every limiting belief is nothing more than a thought repeated until it became a habit. What am? Then you will also realize you have the power to think something new. That is freedom. That is possibility. What am? That is how you break the chains and step into a self no longer governed by yesterday's lies. Remember this, am. The most dangerous limits are not outside of you. They are inside your mind. What am? And the greatest act of courage is not fighting the world, but dismantling the prison you built within yourself. If you can conquer that, there is very little in life you cannot conquer. If awakening the inner power is the beginning, am, and breaking limiting beliefs is the liberation, then the next step is channeling that energy into disciplined, am, relentless action. Because awareness without application leads nowhere. Am. The inspiration without execution dissolves into frustration. Dreams without discipline become regrets. The difference between those who wish and those who achieve is not found in talent or luck. It is found in the quiet daily decisions to act with consistency, even when the motivation fades. We live in a culture obsessed with motivation as a feeling. People wait to feel ready, to feel inspired, to feel like it's the right time. But feelings are fickle. They rise and fall like the weather. Discipline, however, does not bow to feelings. Discipline is the muscle that acts regardless of mood. It is the bridge between vision and reality. If you only move when it feels easy, you will never go far. But when you train yourself to act even when it feels hard, you become unstoppable. Think of any person who has achieved greatness: athletes, artists, thinkers, leaders. What separates them is not that they always felt motivated, but that they acted in spite of not feeling motivated. They showed up when it was inconvenient. They practiced when no one was watching. They kept moving forward when doubt and fatigue whispered to stop. Discipline is not glamorous. It rarely earns applause in the moment, but it builds momentum, and momentum builds miracles. There is also a profound psychological truth here. Action precedes emotion. What Most people wait for motivation before they act, but motivation often comes after action. When you take a step, however small, you generate energy. That movement signals to the brain that progress is possible. And the feeling of motivation follows. This is why disciplined people seem to have endless drive. They are not waiting for motivation to arrive. They are creating it through action. Now, relentless action does not mean chaotic business. It is not about doing everything, but about doing what matters most with focus and persistence. Many people mistake activity for productivity, scattering their energy across 100 distractions. But discipline requires clarity. What is the vision? What is the goal? What are the few actions that, if done consistently, will move me closer to it? When you know your priorities, discipline becomes less about forcing yourself and more about aligning yourself with your highest values. Of course, discipline demands sacrifice. It means saying no to comfort in the moment for the sake of a greater reward later. It means resisting the easy path in order to walk the meaningful one. This is why many avoid it. The discomfort feels like punishment. But here's the paradox. The temporary discomfort of discipline is far less painful than the lasting regret of inaction. One stings for a moment, the other lingers for a lifetime. Relentless action also requires resilience. Not every step will be perfect, and not every effort will yield immediate results. The disciplined mind understands that failure is not final. It is feedback. Each attempt is part of the process. Relentless action is not about never falling. It is about always rising. It is about showing up again and again, with the same determination, regardless of yesterday's outcome. Discipline is also deeply tied to identity. When you tell yourself, I'm disciplined because I choose to be, you reinforce a sense of integrity with your actions. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen that identity. Every time you break it, you weaken it. And the truth is, the most damaging promises broken are not to others. They are the ones we break with ourselves. A disciplined person becomes powerful not because of external control, but because of inner alignment. So, How do you cultivate discipline? Start small. The brain resists radical change, but it adapts to gradual consistency. Begin with one practice, wake up at the same time, commit to 30 minutes of focused work, or practice a new skill daily. Over time, these small acts compound into extraordinary transformation. Discipline is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. And eventually, what once felt impossible becomes effortless. But there's another layer. Discipline, when combined with purpose, transforms into joy. At first, it feels like effort. But as your actions align with your vision, you begin to feel a sense of flow, a harmony between who you are and what you are doing. You no longer see discipline as a burden. You see it as freedom, the freedom to shape your life intentionally rather than be enslaved by impulse. This is where relentless action carries you beyond mere self-improvement. It becomes a way of honoring the power you awakened and the beliefs you broke. It is the proof that you are not only thinking differently, you are living differently. Every disciplined act is a declaration. I am not the prisoner of my past. I am the creator of my future. So when we speak of rising and conquering, it is not just about great visions or inspired ideas. It is about the discipline to rise early, to study when others are sleeping, to keep going when the results are invisible. It is about relentless action that compounds day after day until what once seemed impossible becomes inevitable. And remember, this motivation may start the journey, but discipline finishes it. Relentless action is the chisel with which you carve destiny. If you have the courage to be disciplined, to act with persistence, even when no one notices, you will create a momentum that no obstacle can stop. Because in the end, the world does not reward intentions. It rewards results. And results belong to those who have the strength to discipline their mind, direct their energy, and act with relentless conviction. We have spoken about awakening the inner power, breaking the chains of limiting beliefs, and anchoring motivation in discipline and relentless action. Yet, there remains one final step, the force that sustains all the others, the current that keeps us moving when every other source of motivation dries up. That force is purpose. And not just any purpose, but one that reaches beyond yourself. At some point in life, we all discover that personal ambition alone is not enough. Yes, it can carry us for a while. The desire for achievement, success, recognition, these can ignite a fire. But over time, when life becomes difficult and setbacks accumulate, ambition begins to waver. If your motivation is only rooted in yourself, it can easily collapse under the weight of disappointment. But when your drive is tied to something larger, something that transcends your own comfort or gain, you tap into a well of strength that does not run dry. Purpose is what gives struggle meaning. It transforms pain into progress, obstacles into opportunities, and effort into devotion. A person with purpose will endure storms that would break someone else, not because they enjoy suffering, but because they see the suffering as part of a greater mission. Purpose is not about avoiding difficulty. It is about finding a reason so powerful that difficulty no longer deters you. Psychologically, purpose rewires the way we experience life. Studies in neuroscience show that when individuals feel connected to a mission greater than themselves, their brain responds differently to challenge. Stress becomes less corrosive, perseverance becomes more natural. It's as if the mind says, this isn't just about me, it's about something bigger. And that shift in perspective changes everything. Am. But purpose is not something you find lying on the side of the road, waiting for you to stumble upon it. Am. Purpose is cultivated. It emerges when you ask deeper questions. Who am I serving beyond myself? Am. What impact do I want to leave behind? How will the world be different because I lived? Am. These questions pierce through the noise of superficial desires and point you towards something enduring. Am. Consider those who inspire us most. Rarely do we remember them for their possessions or personal gains. Am. We remember them for their contribution, for what they gave, not what they kept. Leaders, teachers, inventors, healers. Am. Artists. They lived with a fire fueled by service. Their work was not about feeding their ego. Am. It was about feeding humanity. That is why their legacy endures. And this is where the deepest motivation lies. What am? When your actions are tied to a purpose greater than yourself. Am. You are no longer running on the limited fuel of willpower. You are drawing from something infinite. You stop asking, do I feel like it? And instead declare, it must be done, because it matters. That kind of conviction does not fade in the face of adversity. Now, what am? Let's be clear. Living with purpose beyond self does not mean abandoning your own dreams or sacrificing everything you care about. Am. It means aligning those dreams with something that uplifts others as well. What am? It means using your gifts not just to elevate your own life, but to elevate the lives of those around you. What am? The most fulfilled individuals are not the ones who hoard success, but the ones who multiply it by sharing it. Am. And here lies a profound paradox. When you live for something beyond yourself, you actually become more powerful within yourself. Your energy expands. Your resilience deepens. What am? Your actions gain weight because they are no longer shallow attempts at self-validation. They are expressions of meaning. Am. But purpose also demands courage. It asks you to live intentionally, to step outside the narrow boundaries of comfort. Am. To risk being misunderstood or criticized. Not everyone will see your vision, and not everyone will support it. Am. But purpose is not about pleasing the crowd. It is about honoring the call within. What am? When you live with that kind of authenticity, you inspire others to do the same. Am. And this is where everything we've spoken about comes full circle. Awakening inner power gives you the awareness. Am. Breaking limiting beliefs gives you freedom. Discipline and relentless action give you momentum. Am. But purpose gives you direction. Without it, even the strongest will eventually drift. With it, even the weakest can rise. So I ask you now, what are you living for that is bigger than you? What vision? Am. What impact will you dedicate your life to? Because when you discover that am, you discover a source of motivation that no setback, no failure, no hardship can extinguish. Am. Living with purpose beyond self is not about conquering the world in the sense of domination. It is about conquering yourself so fully that your life becomes a light for others. Am. It is about leaving this world better than you found it, not through grand gestures alone, but through the consistent choice to rise, to act, and to serve. And so, as you rise and conquer, remember this, what am? The true measure of your life will not be in what you gained, but in what you gave. What am? Not in the mountains you climb for yourself, but in the bridges you built for others. And when your time comes, am, it will not be the possessions you leave behind that matter. It will be the legacy of courage, discipline, am, and purpose that continues to echo long after you are gone. So rise within yourself, break free, am, Act relentlessly and conquer not for pride, but for purpose. Am. Because a life lived only for the self may shine for a season. Am. But a life lived beyond the self ignites a fire that never goes out.